Thank you for attending this important event tonight. Just quickly, 2 points of order. The emergency exits are to the right for those who don't know this building and behind. And please make sure that your mobile phones are turned off. It is great to see so many people here, although of course I would rather it was under happier circumstances. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jeremy Apfel, Chairman of Barnet Synagogue. I'm delighted to welcome our MP, the Right Honourable Teresa Villiers, as well as Chief Inspector Andy Mariner from the Barnet Neighbourhood Policing Team, and Danny Stone, Director of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Anti-Semitism. I'm also pleased that members of our neighbouring communities of Woodside Park and Hadley Wood are able to attend. The format for the evening is as follows. Following my introduction, Teresa will speak, followed by some words from Chief Inspector Mariner. At that point, I will open it up to the floor for questions and comments. As the figures released by the Community Security Trust last week confirmed, anti-Semitism really is on the rise. Their figures show that anti-Semitic incidents in the UK hit an all-time high in July, in the wake of the Gaza conflict. A total of 302 incidents were reported to the CST, the highest monthly total since records began in 1984. So, it is hardly surprising that our community meeting here, just about 3 weeks ago, was tense. For those who weren't here, we had a community forum and question and answer session with Mike Wine of the CST on the rise in anti-Semitism. In many ways, it was an emotional meeting. There was real anger expressed at broadcast journalists' lack of integrity in reporting the situation in Gaza accurately and fairly. There was concern over potential attacks on the local community and fear for the future of the wider community in this country. One of the follow-up items from that meeting was for me to contact Teresa. I was delighted to find her so receptive to our concerns and so ready to enter what I hope will not be the lion's den here this evening. I would just like to raise a couple of points before I sit down. To quote the Chief Rabbi, "The Jews are the canary in the coal mine, and other groups should take note when they begin to suffer from poisons in the political atmosphere." So this rise in anti-Semitism is concerning, not just from a Jewish perspective, but it is important for all those who love the UK, who believe in the democratic nature of this country, and for all those who call this country their home. I also want to ask what can be done to address the complicity of the media in this rise in anti-Semitism, fueled by non-governmental organisations and so-called campaigning charities, including Oxfam and Save the Children. For being no doubt, the media is complicit. And finally, perhaps a point for Chief Inspector Mariner, put to me by the Chairman of Woodside Park Synagogue, who unfortunately can't be here this evening. He is very concerned that there will be no material additional police presence over the high holy days, specifically outside synagogues. This is most disappointing given the current highly charged climate, and I would be grateful for some comment on this. I will now hand over to our MP, Teresa Villiers.
Well, I am very grateful to you, Jeremy, and for all of you for inviting me to your shul this evening. I feel that this is an important opportunity for me to show my support and solidarity for all of my Jewish constituents during what has been a very, very difficult time over the summer. I'm going to keep my opening remarks short because really what I'm here to do is to listen to you, to hear your experiences and to find out from you what more I can do to help get this problem addressed. And I would say that this meeting is very timely because I and my Conservative colleagues Matthew Offord and Mike Freer and David Burrows will be seeing the Home Secretary tomorrow afternoon to express our very serious concerns about the current situation. So I'll make sure your voice is heard loud and clear at the highest levels of government. I have already had a chance to discuss this matter with the Prime Minister, and he has given me his personal assurance of how very seriously he takes this matter. I thought I would start with some of the figures, because they're quite stark. You've heard some of them already. I'd emphasise that these figures are incidents. They don't necessarily all involve crimes, and I'm sure Chief Inspector Mariner will be able to give us the crime statistics. But it's clear that over the summer there's been a significant escalation in anti-Semitic incidents and attacks here in the UK, and I'm afraid in many other parts of the world as well. Anti-Semitic incidents reached record levels in July. As you've heard, 302 were recorded. That's over 400% more than in the equivalent month the previous year. By comparison, only 304 incidents were recorded in the first 6 months of the whole of last year. The previous highest ever monthly total was for January 2009, which also coincided with a period of conflict between Israel and Hamas. 51% of those 302 recorded incidents involved direct reference to the conflict in Gaza. 101 anti-Semitic incidents in July involved the use of language or imagery relating to the Holocaust, of which 25 showed evidence of far-right political motivation or beliefs. 25% of those incidents took place on social media, and the CST recorded 150 incidents in August 2014, the third highest ever monthly total. These are truly shocking figures. As soon as the Gaza crisis started, I contacted the local police here to urge them to be vigilant on anti-Semitism, because unfortunately we have experience of incidents where Israel is in the media where that translates into anti-Semitic incidents on the street. At that stage, the problem hadn't yet manifested itself, but of course, sadly, it has since done so. As things developed, you've heard I was in touch with many of my constituents expressing their concerns about this situation, and I issued a strongly worded public condemnation of what was happening. I am a serial complainer when it comes to media bias on coverage of Israel and the Middle East, which I think is unacceptable by the BBC, also by Channel 4 News. I think in particular is relentlessly anti-Israel, and that feeds a climate which produces and leads to more anti-Semitism. I've also written to the Home Secretary, the Community Secretary and the head of the Met, urging vigilance on this matter and urging all of my colleagues in government to show their support and solidarity for the Jewish community. I met with the Jewish community in Belfast because sadly the synagogue there was subject to vandalism. They were shocked by what they'd experienced. They told me that throughout all the years of the Troubles they'd never actually experienced anti-Semitic attacks or incidents, and they were deeply saddened that that had occurred in recent days. I welcomed the announcement by our local police of extra police patrols here, but I know that's something you'll want to discuss further. And I assure you that I have always been a very strong friend of Israel. I will continue to support the State of Israel, and I will be doing whatever I can to ensure that the government, the police, the council, all of us are vigilant and take as seriously as we possibly can efforts to counter anti-Semitism, which is utterly unacceptable and something I condemn very strongly and have a record of campaigning against dating back over 20 years. I look forward to hearing your questions. Thank you.
how do I follow that? I wanted to say thank you very much for inviting me to. Hopefully over the course of the time that we're together this evening, I'll be able to provide some reassurance to you locally. We've heard about some of the statistics nationally. I'm happy to talk about the local statistics. The increase locally is also around about 400%, but actually the numbers are, it's not good at all, but the numbers are low. To give you some numbers very quickly, in the past 18 weeks there have been 51 reports of anti-Semitism. In the same 18 weeks last year there were 11. So that obviously percentage-wise there's a huge increase. I have looked through every single report that they relate to, and I'm happy to go into further details that probably come out in questions. Very quickly, the question was raised regards High Holy Days. I'd like to say straight away that our Borough Commander Adrian Usher is spending a fortune to ensure that we have adequate police resources. A central London unit based at Scotland Yard has got a huge plan across London to ensure visibility over that period. And locally, starting on the 25th of September, very timely, is Project Mercury, which on the first day will see 500 police officers, volunteers and various other people out in force to reassure and talk to people. So hopefully, and in fact I'm not going to finish there, I'm going to finish by saying that crime in London actually is down 17% compared to last year, and hopefully the rest can come out in questions. So thank you.
Thank you both for those comments. There are roving microphones. I'd ask you to please stand up when you want to ask a question. You may say who you are, you may not want to say who you are, that's fine. And I'll take questions in batches of 3.
My name is Sylvia Postel, and I have been in touch with our MPs and also Danny Stone. The reason I'm standing is so that he should recognise me. I'd like to thank you for your response, both of you. And it's very well quoting all these figures which just show how deep this problem is. And it's all very well condemning what is going on. But what action is going to be taken? I think this is why we're all here tonight. The Jewish community, I think you'll agree, are very tolerant, and we're quite not subservient, but we like to discuss things in a reasonable way. Unfortunately, the people who are attacking us attack in a completely different way. And I feel that new laws have to be put into place quite quickly so that these perpetrators are not going to attack us physically, which is what is being done at the moment. Also, I feel the media have to be taken to task. You're absolutely right. They are very, very much responsible. They must take the responsibility for a lot of what is happening to all of us all over the world. Even the Foreign Press Association have condemned their own journalists, saying that they cannot tell the truth while they're in Gaza because of all the threats by Hamas. But all this talk is just talk. We would like some action, please. And that's why we're all here tonight.
You, sir, please.
Hi, my name is Mark Harriman. I represent North West London Friends of Israel. I'd like to know if the speakers could let me know how a shop supporting the far-right, far-right German organisation can be allowed to be open in North Finchley.
Arab money has purchased a huge swathe of property, business, football, etc., etc. Qatar sponsors terrorism. Qatar has supplied the terrorist organisation which means to fire thousands of rockets on the civilian population of Israel. Qatar is hosting the World Cup. Qatar also hosts Khaled Marshall, the leader of Hamas, who sits there atop his reputed fortune of of $2.6 billion, to which we, the taxpayer of the UK, have undoubtedly contributed. In view of the disproportionate reporting of Operation Protective Aid by the media at large, I would like to know if there is Arab money dictating how the news is disseminated in the UK. I would also like to know how much Arab money is in our universities, which enables Palestinian organisations to influence and intimidate not only the educators, but also the student body. Isn't it time that the government put a cap on how much of the UK is being bought up by countries who could be forming part of the Trojan Wars, which in due time will complete the Islamisation of the UK? Isn't it time that the government seized the assets of countries that sponsor terrorism? And can I just pass over to my husband?
Hi, John Barnett. Just to add, yesterday's Daily Telegraph article by Andrew Gilligan clearly set out the active and open support for ISIS by Kuwait and Qatar. Why not put sanctions on their airlines and also their royalty who come here for Ascot, etc., and hobnob with the British elite and the monarchy? Freeze their assets, sequester them. There's the Shard, there's Harrods. Don't let them come here, and then you might find they'll toe the line.
On what effective action can be taken? Well, I think the best way I'd approach that is to go back to some work that I did in 2005-2006, which was to be part of the all-party inquiry into anti-Semitism, which was organised by Danny and his colleagues in that group. And we produced 35 recommendations to deal with the problem of anti-Semitism in this country. And a very significant number of them have been acted on, and in particular, the fact that I think virtually every police force in the country now is recording anti-Semitic incidents has happened directly as a result of that report. It is also the case that for the first time we have a cross-Whitehall working group on anti-Semitism, which is ensuring that the government is focused on this very strongly. It also contributed to Michael Gove's decision to secure funding for the security for Jewish schools. Sadly, I mean, the fact is, anti-Semitism is something which is vile in its persistence. Whatever you do, it is never possible to eliminate it altogether. But I am determined to fight it, and so are my colleagues in government. And perhaps the last thing I would say on that point is John Mann, who's a Labour MP who hates everything Conservative, never has a good word to say for any of us, but even he has recognised that the government has taken this very seriously, not least in the 3 responses that is published to the all-party group's report over the years since its publication. So there is a huge amount still to do. We must always be vigilant on this kind of hate crime, but there has been a lot of action has been taken. And I think it's partly as a result of that that we know the scale of the problem now. I think were it not for that work by the all-party group, we wouldn't be aware of how serious this problem is. On the shop in North Finchley, which is affiliated with the far right, I'm afraid I'm not aware of the facts of that case, but I'll certainly look into it. And if there's any chance of getting it closed down, I think that would obviously be a great idea. As for Sandra's question on the influence of Qatari money in funding terrorism, we in this country have some of the toughest rules in the world on terrorist financing. Clearly we can't take action unless there's actual proof that money is going to finance terrorist groups, but I will certainly ensure that all those comments she's made are passed on to my colleagues in the Foreign Office, because it is of course essential that we do everything we can to prevent money from finding its way into the wrong hands. In terms of the universities, clearly anti-Semitism on campus is one of the most serious forms of this problem. It's obviously clearly associated with Islamist extremism, which is something, again, the government takes very seriously with its prevent programmes. We will continue to do everything we can to counter the poisonous narrative which is peddled on campus and in many other places, which not only seeks to denigrate and undermine our values and our way of life in this country, but of course far too often has a vile anti-Semitic undertone to it as well, and that's something we will continue to stand up to and do all we can to counter.
Go straight on to in terms of locally for the police, what action has been taken. The most important thing is, yes, we do take all anti-Semitic attacks very seriously. They are flagged. That is absolutely correct. They're allocated to a detective constable or detective sergeant, which is the most highly trained investigators that we have in every single occasion. We have a unit that deals with all hate crime, and the officers go on special courses and they're experiencing a number of different things. It is those guys that will investigate all of these crimes. If something happens, for example, there were stickers that were stuck around Golders Green, every single police officer in the area is made aware of all of the issues. We use everything that we possibly can to try and apprehend the person or people that do it. And in that actual case, it was an off-duty police officer that was on his way home from work that actually saw what was happening and jumped on this guy. And kind of it's taken personally by all of us, because it's just not right. It's a human side. But the other thing is that individual, to talk about that case, he's been given bail conditions. His bail conditions have basically banned him from 5 different boroughs in London, and this is one of them. Just to show that every bit of the law that we can use in every case, we do use. I have looked, as I said before, at all 51 cases that have happened in the last 18 weeks, and I'm really pleased that people are reporting these crimes or these incidents when they do occur. I've looked at some of the reports that show that we've used extensive CCTV inquiries, we've used automatic number plate recognition, and we've managed to trace people, and we've managed to get the person that made the report, and we've managed to get the perpetrator, if you like, together. And often we've realised it was a misunderstanding or all that kind of. So it's not always the way it seems in the first instance. And I would like to reassure you that 51 reports haven't always ended up as a crime. We've had one actual incident that, when we got to the bottom of it, was actually a crime. I think that's really important to mention. In terms of the far-right organisation in North Finchley, I do have a little bit more information around that. The local police and the local authority went to visit the shop, and there's some problems with the branding. Don't start shouting at me. There's problems with the branding, which obviously alludes to this association, and it doesn't actually commit a criminal offence. And I know there was a point around the law, and that's maybe something to come back to, but as it stands right now, that isn't an offence. There have been some protests at the shop, and the shopkeeper was quite happy to close where those protests took place, and we policed those. And I just wanted to say, in terms of seizing assets, it's a little bit above my pay grade to talk about international affairs, but I would just like to make the point that whenever there are criminal assets, the Metropolitan Police will go after those assets, and we go after the money as much as we go after the people. So just to reassure you, on a local level, that's taken very seriously as well.
Responding to the 3 questions in turn, Sylvia, what action can be taken? The chair of the All-Party Group, John Mann, that Theresa mentioned, has instigated a parliamentary report into the anti-Semitism that's emanated from the conflict. I'm going with 3 MPs to Berlin and Paris in the next couple of days to look at what happened there and what we might learn. And then we will be doing a series of meetings in the UK, and we will be coming up with recommendations about, I don't know about new laws, but certainly could existing laws be implemented in a better way? So could the Public Order Act be used more effectively during protests? The shop in North Finchley, I know that the CST were in touch with the owners as well, to try and bring that to their attention, this possible far-right connection. I don't actually know where they've got to yet, but I believe that the owner didn't actually know that there was that far-right connection, and they were bringing that to their attention. And lastly, two words on campus. I'm going to say something controversial. I don't think that Arab money is any more behind the media than Jewish money is. And I as a Jewish person, am concerned about using words like Islamicization in the same way that I don't like to hear Judaization of the West Bank, for example. Controversy over. What I would say is that there is a fair point on the money that's gone into campus. If you look at the work that Robert Halfon, MP, has done on this, there's a lot on the internet, and the Pears Foundation have sponsored a seat in anti-Semitism at Birkbeck University. And you can read all about that online. We're doing work with the Universities UK and with the NUS, and they've both got guidelines on hate speech on campus, which you can see on our website. So it's not like nothing's happening. There really is action being taken.
A couple of questions. In that capacity, first of all, I've been on a number of the events which have been organised in the last few weeks, from the event that's held at the Jewish Free School to the event outside the Royal Courts of Justice last week, and also one of the anti-counter demos which have taken place outside Marks and Spencer's, and I know Mark Harriman was there that evening, in Oxford Street. I have to tell you, one of the things, and this is really addressed to the police, that we were concerned about was we were very much there as a counter group to show our solidarity to Marks and Spencer's for the difficulties they're facing every Thursday evening with pro-Palestinian demonstrators, making it extremely difficult for people to go into Marks and Spencer's to shop. So we were there purely in that capacity. We had police officers who were writing down everything that we were saying. Now, we weren't there as perpetrators, we were there to defend the rights of Jewish people and anybody in this country who chooses or wants to shop in Marks and Spencer's. And I cannot understand why the police were actually feeling it necessary to do that. Having said that, I have to commend the police for your fantastic work at some of the other demonstrations that we've been to that have kept us safe as a community. And I would just like to understand why people were taking notes of what people were saying and what threat we were perceived to be causing as a group of people who were there to try to defend the liberty of a company to make its choice as to what products it actually sells.
It's very reassuring to hear from the speakers the measures that are being taken to counteract the anti-Semitic feeling that's around the country at the moment. But as has already been said, the media are very much to blame for their misrepresentation of biased reporting and stirring up this sort of feeling. Now, I understand that there's not much you could do about private newspapers or Sky Television, for example, but the BBC is a public-funded body, and it's a disgrace that they should be able to so dishonestly report facts that are... I would really like to know what is going to be done to stop it.
My name's Ian Starr, I've been with this show for the last 50 years or so, and I'd like to turn the meeting slightly. Apart from us asking what they are going to do, what can we do about anti-Semitism? I was at just one comment. I was at the rally last Sunday outside the Royal Courts of Justice. One thing stood out clearly. When we go to rallies, we don't have our scarves around our faces. We are proud to support Jews and Judaism. We are proud of being Jews. We're not ashamed of being there. When you personally are faced with or come up against people who say, I may be anti-Israel, but I'm not anti-Semitic, there's a question for you to ask of them. Do you think it was a good thing for the Jews to be expelled from Gaza? They're going to say yes. Follow it up. Do you think it would be a good thing for the Jews to be expelled from the West Bank? They'll say yes. can you ask them why the people of Gaza are starving when they expropriated dozens of viable farms?
They're not starving.
Said to be starving.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I'll correct myself then. Are reported to be starving, if you prefer. Why do you think that Israel is pursuing an ethnic cleansing when your answers to my questions are you support ethnic cleansing on the West Bank and on Gaza? And finally, my questions to you were all about Jews. They weren't about Israelis occupying, they were about Jews. So if you tell me you're anti-Israel but not anti-Semitic, you have got your brains out. Thank you.
The first question about demonstrations, I'm sure the Chief Inspector will answer on that, but it gives me an opportunity to express my concern about some of the deeply unpleasant incidents that have been connected with sort of extremist activities at Palestinian demonstrations. It's clearly been one of the unpleasant aspects of what's been happening over recent months. And I was truly shocked when I heard of the incident where a demonstration and boycott outside of Sainsbury's in Holborn had led to the withdrawal of kosher food, where just blatantly what was purporting to be a demonstration about the situation in the Middle East and the actions of the Israeli government had turned manifestly into an anti-Semitic form of activity. So those are matters of grave concern. Returning to the second question on the BBC, as I've said, I repeatedly complain about BBC coverage, and I have been particularly concerned by Channel 4 coverage this summer. What you can do, it's always worth remembering that the BBC do have rules, and if they get a lot of complaints, then it doesn't necessarily fix the problem, but they do have to respond to them. So I urge you, every time you see an example of bias on the BBC, send them a complaint letter, send them a complaint email, copy me in because I will do it too. I am very, very keen that you all become my media monitors and tell me whenever you see an instance of bias in the media, because I will compile a dossier and I will use that in my campaign to get some more even-handed reporting. It's not, as a government, something we can do. We can't mandate the BBC to report things in a particular way, but what we can do is to continue to complain as local MPs every time they take a position which is unfair to Israel. And in relation to, I think it was Ian's comments at the end, it is, again, what has been deeply depressing about this summer is this continual shading of anti-Israel sentiment into what is blatantly anti-Semitic sentiment, which is utterly unacceptable. Whatever, it's entirely legitimate to have a range of views on what people think of the tactics of the Israeli government and the rights and wrongs of what they choose to do in Gaza. There is absolutely no excuse whatsoever for that criticism to mutate into anti-Semitic attacks, either here or anywhere else in the world.
As your question, Natalie, about the public order policing. Well, I've been a police officer for about 17 years, and I'm a public order commander. And one of the things that I was involved in recently was about a month ago in a demonstration that happened in Kensington. I had planned for about 500 to 700 people to turn up, and I ended up dealing with around about 10,000. So sometimes we obviously have to plan for whatever comes next, and protesters that will take immediate criminal action will spring from left of field, and they are all types of people from all walks of life, and police officers that undoubtedly would have been writing those notes. I say undoubtedly, I'd like to think the officers writing those notes will be planning for what might come next, and most of the time absolutely nothing happens. But the Metropolitan Police is renowned for its public order policing. That's just one of the things that we do. but I'm grateful for some of the positive comments that you gave, and we like to police things in a balanced way as we possibly can. The second point I'd like to draw from is also from my kind of policing experience, and that's I've worked in Ealing for a while, and I worked in Lambeth and Brixton for a while, I worked in Islington and Barnet. I've only been here 2 years, and I've been absolutely staggered at how cohesive the Jewish community is and how you do things to support yourselves. But we are there to help, and the facility is there to dial 999 or 101, and also you have the CST have a fantastic website with lots of useful things on there that you can use to report incidents as well. So please call us. I accept the point completely, but please call us.
Thanks. Briefly on the media, I can't necessarily say what one can do about the BBC. What I can do is give you one positive story and one ask. On Wednesday we'll be launching a report, or rather the government is launching a report together with the Society of Editors, which brings together the editors from across the media, on how best comments boards on newspapers online can be moderated. It's a best practice guide. That's something that we pushed for, they've done, and it's a start. And that's something where there's been a significant problem with anti-Semitism, and we're starting to move to a solution on it. Also, now the Press Complaints Commission is moving to this new body, the Independent Press Complaints Authority, I think it is. They are starting to look at their new rules. If you want something to do, what can we do? Write to the Code Secretary of this new group and ask them to look at the rules on impartiality and discrimination. At present, if someone writes in the media about an individual Jew, that Jew can complain if they perceive that they've been the victim of an anti-Semitic comment. If someone writes about a group of Jews, that is considered to be an inaccuracy rather than discrimination, even if it's a discriminatory comment. If you'd like them to review that, I'm happy to send you a briefing about it. Write to the Code Secretary. And lastly, on what else you can do, we'll be holding a town hall meeting in February, but in the meantime we're looking to hold events like this with Jewish communities across the country. So if you know Jews in an area, I'll go to Bempton, I'll go to Biggleswade, if you know Jews somewhere in the country that are concerned, have them contact us. We'll do an event with the MP, a listening event, a round table, and we'll take their concerns on board as part of this reporting process.
I'm Shahar. I've been here for about 7 or 8 years. I also work at the local primary school, Walter Hill. I'm Amy Shahar. I've been here for about 8 years. I also work at Walter Hill Jewish Primary School. So I've got two questions. Leading on to Ian Starr's about covering their faces, why can't we take a leaf out of the French government where women were forced to reveal their faces? I thought that was the law here. Because it's quite frightening to see them walking around. They are everywhere. Everywhere. That's point one. Point two, I noticed on the first day of term we had a police car outside the school, which was fantastic. I've got a son at Jane Fairs, and I pick up at Hampton Square. I've been there going for a year. Not once have I seen a police car at pickup time. About 4:30 to 5 o'clock, not once. And there's quite a lot of people around there. Is there anything to be done for security? And is there security on the bus? Is the bus followed?
Okay, the lady.
I'm Arlie Clark, on the board of the Hadleywood Jewish Synagogue. It's very commendable from the police and from yourself, Teresa, that so much is being done from what we can see behind the scenes. But the fact of the matter is, I myself don't want to be a statistic and I don't want to be a victim. I just want to live my life in a peaceful way in the country in which I was born. I'm very happy that everything's going on, but nobody seems to be taking the BBC on. Surely they must be accountable for what they're doing, and I don't want to have to spend my time vigilantly looking at the BBC to see what they're saying. I want them to be held accountable for what they're doing, along with other charitable organisations which, under the law, if they are a charitable organisation, they have to be held accountable for where their monies are going. And I don't have any statistics, I don't really have very much knowledge, but what I do know is that they are totally biased against Jewish people and Israel.
Hi there, my name is Zach Gotthelf. I'm the Shaw's under 35 representative for the Board of Deputies, and I also worked last year for the Union of Jewish Students and the CST, researching anti-Semitism across the country, particularly focus on campuses and universities across the UK. A comment you made earlier about Islamist groups, particularly on campus, I feel and I've seen that there are really two kinds of methods that you see, which is a sort of passive underground promoting of not just anti-Semitic but anti-Western ideas amongst groups such as Hizb ut-Tahrir. And one of my questions is, why are they still not banned in this country, and when are they going to be banned? They're banned across most countries across Europe, the Middle East, Asia, and the States and North America, but they're still not banned in this country. My second question is, there's a more active visual anti-Israel, anti-Semitism, which is seen more across sort of far left groups who aren't Muslim Islamist groups but are typically aggressive, more prominent, more vocal, which I think is where more of the threat is coming from. I want to know, how are they being dealt with across the country? And finally, another question is that I feel there is a potential ignorance or intolerance growing amongst both Jewish communities and other anti-Israel communities, where there's an ignorance of each other and stereotyping. And I'd like to know what sort of steps are being taken to ensure that this doesn't lead to an issue in the sort of future.
I'm not myself a believer in governments passing laws about what people wear, so I don't feel able to support that kind of change. I would also take the opportunity to state what I'm sure will be obvious to everyone, that there is a problem with anti-Semitism amongst extremist elements of the Muslim community, but I am absolutely convinced that that is a small minority, and that the vast majority of those who practice Islam as a faith are entirely peaceful in their outlook and not anti-Semitic. In terms of the BBC, I'm not sure there's a huge amount I can add to what I've said already. I will do my very best to hold them to account. I agree there is also a concern around charities. This government is absolutely determined to prevent any charitable funding from being misused or diverted to terrorists. We have legislation in place on that at the moment, but it may well be that we pass further legislation on charities to prevent their being abused or hijacked by extremists. I think there certainly is a problem in relation to some charities and anti-Israel propaganda. War on Want is the example that springs instantly to mind, and I'm a serial complainer about them as well, because I do not believe that they should receive tax breaks if they're going to be blatantly political in the way they are in relation to the Middle East. On Hizb ut-Tahrir, this is a continuing problem. I will raise this again with my colleagues in government. They are a very dangerous organisation, and these processes of prescription take a long time. They're quite legally difficult to do, but I certainly think we need to take more action on that than we have. On the far left anti-Semitism, I agree, it is a poisonous element of anti-Semitism generally. It is of course the case that there is one MP on the hard left who is currently being investigated by the police for his statements regarding Bradford. I'm not allowed to comment on an individual case, but I wish those officers every success. And I think the last point, it is a very important one. It's that ignorance of the Jewish community by many parts of the UK is one of the problems here. Lack of understanding. There are some anti-Semitic incidents which possibly aren't meant harmfully, but they result from people's inability to understand the history of the oppression and persecution of the Jewish people. And I think probably one incident that rather springs to mind is when the Labour Party produced an image of Michael Howard and Oliver Letwin as flying pigs. And I think probably that wasn't meant to be anti-Semitic, but because of the history of the deeply unpleasant and poisonous stereotypes of the Jewish community, to portray two leading Jewish politicians in that way was unpleasant and caused deep distress. So I think it's a matter for me and many of my colleagues in Parliament who represent constituencies which are lucky enough to have substantial Jewish communities, that we need to be part of reaching out and explaining and raising awareness of the concerns of the Jewish community. And I know that the community itself is also very good at getting its point of view across, and it's important that you all reach out and explain to others why it is that these images are so harmful and so upsetting and so damaging.
I just have a couple of small points to make in answer to some of those questions. There was a point raised over here earlier about face covering in terms of a public order situation, and I just wanted to reassure you that if people do cover their faces for a criminal purpose, then the police already have the authority to remove those face coverings. So if that was where the question was coming from, or what stemmed from that next question, then just so you know, that law is already there, and we do use it. The second point was just about the schools. That was yourself, wasn't it? About the schools. I'm a Barnet police officer, so I can only really speak for Barnet in kind of granular detail. But I can say that we do have police officers on buses. We have what's called the Transport OCU, which is paid for by the Mayor. There's over 1,000 police officers that work for that area, and they're on buses every day. There are police officers in buses in this area. In terms of Barnet's response, last week we've got around about 55 Jewish schools in Barnet, and last week police officers visited. You're going to say there's a load more? Okay, I'll get them off you at the end. Last week we visited 55 different Jewish schools in Barnet. 15 of those, my officers specifically spoke to the head teachers. But what I would like to just point out that this isn't specifically in relation to increased intelligence. This is in relation to your concerns and us listening to your concerns. I think that's an important part that I'd like to make. Thank you. Nearly got time.
Two very brief points. On the BBC again, and MPs, like Theresa mentioned one. The point is that we need people to be moderating the debate when tension spikes in the Middle East, and that is part of the report that we're going to be doing, is looking about what are the best ways to do that, what are the best frameworks we can put in place to ensure that things are calm and reasonable, and that applies as much to the JC as it does other papers. And in terms of Muslims and Jews and what's being done this week, I attended a reception by the Three Faiths Forum. Some of the work that we did led to a school faith linking program where people go into faith schools, bring children from another faith school with them and do drama projects and other kinds of projects so that they can learn to break down stereotypes, hopefully before they form.
My name is Susan Storing, and I want to thank Mrs. Villiers, who has always been very, very supportive anytime I've been in contact with you. And I want to address the business about the BBC, Channel 4, and Jon Snow. I want to know whether it's possible for someone from the government to speak to these people and to say, we fund you. Your anti-Israel stance is translating into anti-Semitic acts. We require you to have training and sensitivity about what constitutes anti-Semitism. I believe, I'm not sure about this, but I believe that the Pears Institute does training in anti-Semitism. And if so, if there is an institute that does that, then I would want, us and our representatives to say, you are a publicly funded body. We require you to have training in what constitutes anti-Semitism, because as a publicly funded body, you are required to maintain good relationships between the communities in our country. and we don't want you undermining them.
I would like to address my question to the Commissioner. The statistics are there. Where are the arrests? Are you arresting anybody? I can't see anybody going to jail. Are the judges lenient? You've got to be more active. Otherwise, do you think the Jewish population should be active and be more aggressive? We're not like that, but we may be, if you carry on ignoring the situation. The Community Security Trust should be called the Community Statistics Trust. It's all about figures. We're talking about people here, and you've got to do something to prevent it, act and punish.
One observation really on the BBC, and then a question actually about the BBC and politicians generally. The observation is I wrote a very lengthy letter to the BBC recently, having spent hours poring over their website. There was a straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak, which made me go through all of their historic reporting over the last few weeks. I got a couple of days ago a stop response saying we're not going to respond to all your points because we can't respond to everyone. So just to let you know, we have a couple of articles where we were pro-Israel, which I thought was disgusting, to be perfectly honest. I haven't finished with them yet, but that's the response we're getting. The more general question, if you like, is we're told time and again that we should be writing to MPs, we should be writing to the BBC, whoever it is. I'm worried that this is simply a question of using numbers, and frankly we will be overwhelmed by the amount of people who are writing the opposite type of letter. And I just wondered where the kind of moral fabric is, if you like, in both politics and in the press, where people don't expect to be written to be told what they should or shouldn't be writing, or what they should or shouldn't be saying. If you go back to the 1930s in Germany and in Western Europe, you look at the, I'm not necessarily comparing the two, but you see that it's just a question of people losing that kind of moral compass and just following what the herd is doing, and not necessarily standing up for what's right.
On Susan's question, thank you for your kind words, Susan. I will keep up the pressure on my colleagues in the International Development Department about the overseas aid issues that we've discussed on many occasions. I mean, I do think that it is important for people who are involved with the public service broadcasters to be aware of equalities issues, to be aware of how to, the sensitivities in relation to the Jewish community and all others. I think the idea of requiring their journalists to take training on these matters is probably a good one. I mean, for all sorts of very good reasons. There are barriers, though, between governments and the broadcasters that are funded by taxpayers' money. We can't dictate to them how they do this, but yes, I agree. There is a real problem with a lack of awareness, as we were just discussing before, in the general population, a lack of awareness of the sensitivity around these issues. And of all people, well, of all people, journalists should take care in terms of their reporting, and I agree. In particular, there is a big problem with Channel 4 News. I was quite shocked with some of the things that I saw on it over the summer that seemed to degenerate into ranting, and I will continue to do everything I can to try and counter that. I'm sorry to hear that, Daniel, you wrote to the BBC and got no answer of substance. I'd be delighted to see your correspondence and to use them in my efforts in relation to the BBC. I agree that people shouldn't have to receive letters to do the right thing, but we do live in a democracy, and I think it does help if members of the public make their views very clear, both to the BBC, to MPs, to everyone else. So I think it helps, but I agree, yes, we should all be standing up for the right thing, regardless of what's in our inbox and what's not.
The question I'll answer is to you, Ralph. Just to say that hopefully I've demonstrated over the evening so far that we're not ignoring you. As I said at the beginning, there were 51 offences or 51 reports over the past 18 weeks. I know you said about statistics, but I'm happy to share at the end because I've literally gone through every single report and I've written notes after each one to say exactly what was at the bottom of each one. And more often than not, actually it turned out not to be any kind of anti-Semitism.
So we shouldn't be worried then, officer?
No.
We shouldn't be worried. That's fine then.
I'm just trying to reassure you that this is based on the actual reports that have come into police. I'm here.
Is that the same kind of reporting like you guys did in Rotherham?
Yeah,
We've just been told by the head of police around here that there's no anti-Semitism in this borough. Hands up anyone who agrees with that. There's no anti-Semitism. There's anti-Semitism.
Sorry.
He did say didn't he say at the bottom, he said there's no anti-Semitism?
My hearing must be slightly defective because I did not hear the Chief Inspector say there is no cause for concern, there is no such thing as anti-Semitism.
He said on those 51 reports at the bottom there's no anti-Semitism.
Not every report actually ends up proving to be either a criminal act or an act of anti-Semitism. So I think we have to listen very carefully.
So then that gentleman's right, we don't have to be worried, we can all go home, there's no anti-Semitism.
Thank you very much. I'll just step in there. You are right to be vigilant, absolutely. I'm not saying for 1 second there isn't anti-Semitism. That I've literally, you guys have given up your evening. I'm not being paid to be here. I might be in uniform. I'm not being paid to be here. It's something that we take very seriously. And I'm literally giving up my own time to come and listen to you, and that's part of our commitment. Just very quickly, some recent incidents. We had a neighbour dispute when there were anti-Semitic undertones. The police took statement after statement after statement from neighbours, and the individual was prosecuted and has gone to court. The guy I described earlier that was putting stickers in Golders Green was actually arrested by a police officer who wasn't even at work, and he's on bail and been banned from a load of boroughs around here, so he can't come and do any more harm. And as soon as he comes back on bail following some statements and some CCTV, he will be charged and will go to court. And there are other examples as well, so hopefully you can see that we do take these things seriously. And I just urge you to keep reporting things either to the police or to the CST, and we'll do everything we can.
Hi, I'm Jasmine Gossell. I'm the current National Director for BBO UK and Ireland. And in that job, I deal with a lot of 13 to 18-year-olds, kind of regionally, but also very focused in the London area. My main question is just to see, moving on from here, not only as a community, but also when I'm dealing with the range of teenagers that I've got, how we should be dealing with any anti-Semitic attacks or comments, whether that's on social media or from face-to-face. Like, obviously we can report to you, but before it gets to that stage, what is the first port of call that we should really be taking and kind of go on from here and have kind of a positive attitude going forward?
Not to belittle all the reactive comments that we have, but we also need to think about education to stop anti-Semitism starting completely. I think there's always been anti-Semitism, but we need to have more education in schools, more integration with all the various faith groups, and I think that might reduce some of the anti-Semitism. You get on social media people standing up saying that Jews use blood of Christians to make matzahs every month and so on. We need to have coordinated action to stop these lies, these untruths. And I think this is something that we need to think on the long term. Sure, we need to think on the short term, but there's a long term problem as well.
Hi, Mark Harriman again. Two questions. Number one is, why are the BBC not being pressured to produce the Bailey report, which was commissioned, I think, 8 to 9 years ago? Why are they spending up to £500,000 suppressing the report? And my other comment is that somebody asked a question about how you can get involved in the fight against anti-Semitism and activism on the streets. Well, get onto Facebook, join up your local groups. We have an active campaign on North West London Friends of Israel. Join us, get on there, get out of the streets, stand up, speak up, and be proud of your identity.
When you see these incidents in social media or you hear about them in the playground, I'm sure it'll be clear to all of you that the way to do it is to respond, to put the counter argument, to explain why those comments are wrong, and that obviously I think involves talking to the individuals concerned if it's that sort of an incident, or getting onto those internet sites and actually putting the counterpoint of view, as well as reporting to the CST or even to the police if they're sufficiently serious. But I think both the first and second questioner, you raised very important issues about how we deal with this issue in relation to young people, and to try, if we're going to tackle this problem for the long term, we need to try and make sure that our education system does inculcate values which involve mutual understanding between different faiths, different traditions. This is a particular issue I look at wearing my other hat as Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, where sectarianism is still such a significant problem in some areas, and divisions within the education system are also continue to be quite controversial. But I think it is important for all of us to work out how we can do more to make sure that schools from different traditions interact with one another. Danny talked earlier on about the links programs between schools, which are all about trying to increase mutual understanding between kids from different backgrounds. So I think that kind of thing, ensuring that children from all faiths and from all backgrounds have the chance to meet one another, to understand one another, is an important long-term way that we can see, I hope, an end to anti-Semitism one day. And lastly, just because I think that's probably more or less the last round of questions, I'd like to come back to this point that was made, I think, by Daniel earlier on about people being in positions of authority, being willing to stand up for what they believe in, to say the right thing, to do the right thing. Well, I have a history of speaking up in favour of Israel, and that's, I think, often earned me the criticism of a number of my constituents. And in fact, one of them emailed me recently and told me I would answer in the hereafter for my attitude on Israel. Well, I'm very happy to do that, because I'm proud to say I'm a friend of Israel, and proud to say I'm a friend of the Jewish community.
I just say very quickly, just to Jasmine's question, you can report things. It says also in the CST internet around Facebook and the fact that Facebook have been very slow to react, as have some other sites. You can now report this kind of activity on Facebook, but the police are interested, and if people don't tell us, we don't know. You don't have to phone 999 or 101. You can also report it online. If you want a police officer to come round to your house, we do it just like Tesco's and other places now, where you can book a slot and we'll get a police officer to come round at the time that suits you. But I make a genuine point, we are there for you, so please use us.
In terms of reporting anti-Semitism on social media, there is a tool online, True Vision, it's called report-it.org, I think it's .org. If you look that up, you can report anti-Semitism that you find online, and that will direct it to who they believe is the relevant task force, police force to deal with that. In terms of educating about anti-Semitism in schools, it's a policy issue for the Jewish community as much as anything else. The Board of Deputies and the Jewish Leadership Council has to look at this. As more Jewish children are going into faith schools, one needs to look at, there's a gap, there is a vacuum, and it needs to be addressed. So I would be asking the question of your board reps and if you know anyone on the JLC, what they are doing about it. And lastly, I'll just come back to that question about statistics in the last round. The CST, to be fair to them, are recognised in the UK, obviously, in Europe and across the world as a model organisation. It would be to our detriment if they weren't keeping the statistics they were keeping, because in the countries where they don't keep them, it's almost impossible to try and get a grasp on what we're dealing with. The police are outstanding in the work they do with the CST. Our community is well protected, and the MPs that I work with, and on this I'll finish, Theresa, from the early stages was involved in the all-party inquiry into anti-Semitism, led the country which has led the world in fighting anti-Semitism from a parliamentary base. I'm going to, as I said, to Berlin and to Paris with a DUP MP, with a Liberal Democrat MP. When the Tricycle Theatre decided it wasn't going to invite the UK Jewish Film Festival back, it was the Culture Secretary that intervened. We've had statements from the Community Secretary, the Home Secretary, and the Prime Minister on anti-Semitism. So my message to you is, the work that we're doing in Parliament is to put in place frameworks to ensure the UK is as good as it can be at fighting anti-Semitism, and we are lucky as a community to have MPs like Theresa and others who are standing up and speaking out for us.
We are running substantially over time.
Can you answer about the Palin report, please?
I'm afraid I'm not aware of that report, but if it's been compiled by the BBC, I think it would make sense for them to publish it. I can certainly contact them about it.
We are running substantially over time, and I'd like to thank Theresa for coming here this evening.
On behalf of Barnet Synagogue, I'd like to thank Theresa Villiers and Chief Inspector Mariner. And as well, thank you very much for coming this evening. Over the last few weeks, being a Jew in England has sometimes felt quite lonely. And there's a saying in the Talmud which says, O chavruta o mesusa, that basically without friends you can feel very despondent, and you can feel almost like there's nothing to live for, basically. And hearing your words tonight, all three of you, and the work that you're doing and the work that you're going to do on behalf of the Jewish community really gives us some heart and gives us a positive view towards the future. And I think it was Mrs. Bark who really summed it up, is that we just want to live in peace in this country. We don't want harm to anybody, and certainly we don't want anyone to harm us as well. And if you can get that message across, that'd be great. Thank you very much.